You know it. I know it. Every year it happens with a certain select group of guys. They've got some buzz during the college season. They're getting some attention. They're getting some mentions. They're getting some focus in terms of their draft stock and what type of NFL players they could be. Then all of a sudden, the offseason process comes along, and bam, wouldn't you know, these guys look great in shorts or in their underpants, especially because that's what we like as scouts and NFL media members. And then all of a sudden, these guys perform well in Senior Bowl drills and in practice, and then they do this, and then they do that. And all of a sudden, people have lost their ever-loving fucking minds. And they go from these guys being thought of as late first to early mid-second round picks to all of a sudden these guys are top 10 talents and top-tier talents in the draft class. Happens every year. And one of these guys this year fits in that category is Noah Spence, 6'2", 255-pound edge rusher, the senior, formerly from the Ohio State University, who spent 2015 at a lower level playing at Eastern Kentucky. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. You know, and it just astounds me to all of a sudden people go from he's down here in terms of the draft consciousness to all of a sudden he's way the hell up here. And, you know, sometimes it takes a while for the draft community as a whole to catch up with the reality, and sometimes the draft community can go into the process with one mindset or one train of thought and be off the track and just be completely wrong. And other times, maybe they were right all along. And I'm hearing so many people talking about Noah Spence and his big-time upside as an edge rusher, Noah Spence and his upside and what he could do at the NFL level, how he could be a dominant edge guy in top 10. And I think it's time everybody just pumps the brakes here just a little bit. Let's pump them. Because the simple fact of the matter is the film does not match the reality that many might purport you to want to believe, especially after Senior Bowl time. Now, that's not to say that this guy's a slouch or that I think he'll be a bust at the NFL level. I do have my concerns about him, both on the field and off the field. But he does have some traits, some characteristics that could translate very well to the NFL level and could help him to achieve some big-time potential performance in the future at the biggest stage. You look at a guy with really good snap anticipation. Not the best, but one of the better guys in this draft on a relatively consistent basis. At least I thought that way. I think some people think that his anticipation of the snap is okay, inconsistent. I thought it was actually pretty good. And I think you take that and combine that with that good initial quickness that he has and that decent playing speed. Now, granted, he ran a 4.80 at the combine in the 40. I will say this in this defense of Noah Spence, that overall, to me, isn't a measurement of his real playing speed, and I don't think that necessarily matches the reality of the film. When I watch a Noah Spence, he's probably more of a mid 4.6, low 4.6 type of 40 guy. You know, that's what I see. Runner for years, what would I know? What have you? But that's what I see. So I thought that performance was a little bit misleading, because this is a guy that demonstrated to me the most important skill an edge rusher could have above all else. That is getting the edge within a 5 to 7 yard window. Like I've talked about with some of the bigger defensive ends in this draft, the Bosa's, the Shaq Lawsons, the Ogbahs, I have concerns about their ability to crash that edge and get that edge in that 5 to 7 yard window where the quarterback is actually going to be. You know, you could sit there and run by an offensive tackle all day long, but if you're 9, 10, 11 yards down the field, you're 3, 4, 5 yards past the quarterback. You're a non-factor. It jumps out on film and it looks great, but at the end of the day, it's all a bunch of wasted fucking time. It doesn't matter. At least to me, with Noah Spence, what I saw was a guy who could get that edge, who could create that penetration in that 5 to 7 yard window on the outside. A guy that I also like his nose for trying to go after the football as a pass rusher. He's not just trying to sack the quarterback or get to the quarterback. He's not just content with that. He's got a really good strip move. He's a guy that really understands the fundamental process of trying to not just sack the quarterback, but strip the quarterback of the football to try and affect turnovers, to try and affect the momentum of the game. And when you look at an edge rusher, you know, that's something that a lot of guys just don't have coming out of college. And frankly, a lot of even really good edge rushers never really developed that knack for that ability for that at the NFL level. Pro Bowl guys at that. But Noah Spence as a college player, who missed all of 2014, who played 2015 at freaking Eastern Kentucky. He's got that nose for hitting at the football. He's got that nose for smacking the ball away from the quarterback. Those are the type of things that can make big-time plays happen. Those could be the type of big-time clutch, game-clinching type of plays that defenses need out of their edge rushers, and Noah Spence can provide that. He's a shorter guy, so he's not huge. I like the pad level that he keeps. He consistently, to me, keeps his shoulders at a height that they should be. He gets really good knee bend. And he's got a nice array of pass rush moves, too. Compared to some of the other guys in this draft class, one knock I have about a lot of the pass rushers, both the traditional defensive ends and the so-called 3-4 outside linebackers, the 4-3 sandbackers, the edge rushers, whatever you want to call them, is a real lack of a pass rush repertoire. Well, in terms of Noah Spence, I think he's got a pretty good set of pass rush moves. He's gotten better in terms of countering to a certain degree. I think he's got a nice rip move, a nice swim move when he chooses to use it. When you combine that with the ability to get that quick explosive burst off of the edge, that could make for a dangerous combination for an NFL offensive tackle to have to defend against. So he's got some nice traits and some things that could project very, very well to the NFL level. But again, there are many areas of concern that I have for Noah Spence. Too many for me to sit there and put my stamp on him as a top 10 or top 15 talent in this draft. Number one, strength. 6'2", 255 pounds. He didn't play strong to me. He didn't play very physical to me. At times I thought he had trouble setting the edge. Now maybe in part that was because if he was trying to get to the quarterback and he was trying to create penetration in the backfield. But I have some concerns, even at 255 pounds, about his ability as a 3-4 outside linebacker to be able to set that edge, because setting that edge is very important for those outside linebackers in those systems at the NFL level. And he just wasn't a guy that did it consistently enough to me. And another area when I watch him on film that I thought he needed a lot of work in was as a run defender. That comes in part with setting the edge. That comes in part with a lack of strength to me, a guy that at times has trouble shedding blockers. And that was shedding blockers in 2015 at the FBS level, if you will, whatever the hell it's called nowadays, the old 1AA level, playing at Eastern Kentucky. He's playing teams like Valparaiso and so on and so forth. And at times, he struggled to disengage from those blockers. And he struggled to effectively bull rush those blockers. He had trouble at times anchoring at the point of attack in the running game. And he was just a guy that I didn't see have a tremendous ability to effectively defend against the run. Not saying that he couldn't develop that at the NFL level, but this guy to me screams situational pass rusher based off of that trait alone. But then when you look at it too, talking about him projecting, the assumption being that he's probably not a 4-3 defensive end, that he's a 3-4 outside linebacker. Here's a guy that I didn't see with tremendous lateral agility. This is not a guy that I see with tremendous hip flexibility. This is a guy that at times, even when he gets a good beeline on the running back or the quarterback, ends up missing the tackle because he just doesn't have that suddenness, the shiftiness, that change of direction that you need to be able to make those plays. And, when I'm trying to project a guy outside as a 3-4 linebacker, I'd like to see a guy with some ability to move out in space, some ability in coverage, and you just didn't see a whole lot of that. Now, granted, part of that at Eastern Kentucky was probably him playing in the system that he did, which precluded him from doing a lot of stuff in coverage, zone coverage, man coverage, but just based off of some of what I see on film from him from a straight-ahead standpoint and a side-to-side standpoint, I'm just not sure he's a guy that you want to leave out in space a lot in coverage. Snap discipline, too, is a problem for me. The Valparaiso game I bring up again, he jumped off sides like 3 damn times. At other times, this is a guy whose anticipation of the snap is good enough, and along with that quickness and burst and explosiveness straight ahead trying to crash the edge, he just doesn't need to be so reckless in terms of jumping the snap like he does. He's trying to create an advantage that he doesn't need to create because he already has that natural advantage built in. I could see some other guys in this draft that lack that big fire burst off the edge. The Bosas, the Agbas, the Lawsons. I could understand them if they had more problems with, jumping the snap, jumping off sides. And Bosa does to a degree too. But I can understand with Bosa because he's trying to get an advantage. He's trying to get an edge that he doesn't naturally have. Well, Noah Spence has it and he still does it. But the biggest concern of all to me, above all else, on the football field, you got to go off the football field. This is a guy that got suspended from the last 3 games of Ohio State's 2013 season, and then bowl game. Then he got busted again for ecstasy. So this is a guy that popped off for ecstasy twice. He ended up getting suspended by the Big Ten permanently, and that's why he had to go to a different level of football for 2015. I mean, these are serious drug concerns from the past, and we could say young people do young, stupid things, and I know I did young, dumb, stupid things in my past too, but at the end of the day, and this is a guy that got popped off for X multiple times. You know, this is something that is serious, and I don't think the draft media talks about nearly enough. They sit there and say, oh, this guy was willing to talk to me, so that automatically means that he's shown contrition and remorse and an understanding of accountability for what he did. You know, he talked to me, so that makes it all right. You know, that's not necessarily the case. And there's going to be trust issues there. And there are going to be some real concerns about his accountability. And some reports so far have been that he hasn't interviewed very well. You know, he's not a clean enough prospect to be able to overcome bad interviews with these teams. Some of these interviews can be stupid in terms of the questions they ask. Ask Eli Apple, I understand that. But you got to be able to take responsibility and accountability and answer those tough questions and answer them effectively and in the right way. And, you know, to me, again, am I willing to spend a top 10 pick on a guy who's gotten popped, not for marijuana, smoking it once, you know, dropping hot in the piss test at the cup at the combine, but a guy that got popped off multiple times for X? I mean, come on. Some people in the NFL draft media in particular are not making nearly enough of a big deal about it as they should, because that could speak to poor judgment. What is this guy going to do with a lot of money? Is he going to be one of those dudes running a fucking drug ring? I'm not saying he is. I think he's probably gotten scared off enough from the shit personally and has seen what it could do to him and how it fucked him up and affected him negatively. And he's lucky that he was given a chance to rebound, and I think he has rebounded nicely. The weekly drug tests he's imposed on himself most certainly haven't hurt. But you never know. You know, when these dudes get money, who knows what the fuck is going to happen? You know, you've already have an established history of stupid decision-making and a lack of being able to trust him. You're going to invest a top 10 pick in this guy when his talent alone really, frankly, does not suggest a top 10 talent? I'm just saying, in terms of an NFL comparison, I think of Marcus Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles, a guy coming out of Louisville that ended up being a surprise first-round pick in 2014. Good initial quickness and snap recognition. Guys that could get some burst, that could get that burst off of the edge. They have that ability, you know, based off of what they showed in college, to get that edge in a 5 to 7 yard window. He also had a nose for stripping the quarterback, too. And like I said, in particular with Noah Spence, that's one of my favorite attributes of his, is he's not just going for the sack. He's trying to force a turnover. I love that about him on the film as much as anything else, even more than his burst and explosiveness off of the edge. But again, you're talking about guys in terms of their fit in a 3-4, questionable hip flexibility, you know, questionable overall athleticism, adequate but not outstanding speed, concerns about their abilities as a run defender in particular, and their ability to set the edge and anchor at the point of attack, and then concerns about their hip flexibility and coverage too, whether they have the shiftiness of the hips and the flexibility of the hips to be able to turn and run. Do they have the ability to change direction and change pace, start, stop, start again, that they need? There was a question I thought about Marcus Smith. I'm still surprised to this day they end up being a first-round pick. And frankly, in some ways, you know, I say a lot of these same things about Noah Spence as well, because when you try to, you know, make him a 4-3 defensive end, does he really fit in that system either? Again, because of that lack of strength and that inability to set the edge. Could the guy be a huge liability in the running game to where he doesn't make enough happen in the passing game as a pass rusher to compensate for that or justify his liabilities in the run game? You know, I think Noah Spence is a good prospect, don't get me wrong. And I think he's a guy that potentially could be a very good, productive NFL player and a good, productive edge rusher. But I don't think he's a particularly great fit for a 4-3. I don't think he's the outstanding fit for a 3-4 that some people make him out to be. Now, he might be a great fit in the 3-4 for maybe a team like Arizona, maybe a team like, you know, a Green Bay, but Green Bay's not going to want him with the character concerns. Ted Thompson doesn't like to play that shit. You know, where is he going to fit? Maybe a Baltimore, but again, is Ozzie Newsome maybe in round 2 going to be? Yeah, I look at Noah Spence, and I think he'll probably will still get drafted perhaps in round 1. I would not be surprised if he dropped until round 2. I think the top 10 talk about him is just crazy. You know, to me, Noah Spence is the type of guy that with the character concerns, what have you, you take him with the last few picks of round 1 because you don't feel like you've wasted as high as of a pick. So the bust doesn't stand out as much if it's later on in round 1. But if you get them there and they play to their potential, they end up far exceeding their draft position and you look like geniuses. You know, a team to me with a really good fit for him would be Noah Spence would be the Seattle Seahawks. Sitting there at pick 26 would be a phenomenal fit in terms of the environment, the culture, the coaching staff, the front office. But again, I look at Noah Spence and everybody trying to sell me this bill of goods about him being a top 10 pick and some type of dominant edge rusher. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I was completely ass wrong about Von Miller. But I was also ass right about how great Khalil Mack was going to be and how much better he was going to be Jadeveon Clowney. I was right about Barkevious Mingo being a fucking bust and so on and so forth. So, you know, I guess only time will tell. But if you think Noah Spence is worth a top 10 pick in this draft, personally, my opinion, I think you're crazy. He's a second-round graded player. He is a second-round talent who, like I said, maybe if you want to roll the dice and get frisky and get nuts, if you're the Seahawks or you're the Cardinals late in round 1, maybe you roll the dice at that point because of the positional value and that natural explosiveness off the edge that he does possess. You can overlook some of these other shortcomings because maybe he can make an instant impact and maybe he can develop and improve as a player. But maybe he doesn't. You know, again, this top 10 talk to me is crazy. I just don't see it. If you do, feel free to let me know why. But I think especially when you factor in those off-the-field issues, it's a lot easier as a fan to sit there and say, yeah, I'd take a guy with that upside in the top 10. Frankly, we really don't know how he interviews. We really don't know how he does in the locker room. We don't know how he does in terms of accepting and warming up to coaching and taking feedback. Now, how does this guy take responsibility? We don't really know him personally. That could be said about the bad things, true. Yes, absolutely, too. But at the end of the day, there are some significant off-the-field concerns about this guy. And I just think that there isn't enough talent there to overcome all of those off-the-field issues to justify a top 10, top 15, or frankly, even top 20 pick in this draft. I just don't see it, period.